Who ends up in CMAX? South Africa's maximum security prisons explained. Imagine a place where freedom isn't just taken away. It's crushed, buried under high walls, electric fences, and constant surveillance. This is CMAX, South Africa's infamous maximum security prison. It's where the most dangerous criminals in the country are sent, those deemed too risky or violent for regular prisons. But who are these people? What crimes are so severe that they warrant spending their lives in one of the world's most secure and isolating facilities? From serial killers to gang leaders, CMAX is home to individuals who have committed some of the most harrowing acts imaginable. These aren't just criminals. They're people whose actions have left indelible marks on South African society. As we explore the lives and crimes of CMAX inmates, one thing becomes clear: understanding this prison is about more than just walls and bars. It's about the broader challenges of crime, punishment, and justice in South Africa. So, let's uncover the truth behind the gates of CMAX, starting with the crimes that put people there. At the heart of CMAX's population are individuals who have committed crimes of extreme violence. Murder, for example, is one of the most common offenses that lands people in maximum security. But these aren't ordinary cases of homicide. CMAX is reserved for the most brutal and premeditated acts. Take Moses Sithole, South Africa's notorious ABC killer, who murdered over 30 women in a gruesome spree that shocked the nation. Serial killers like Sithole are prime candidates for CMAX because their crimes demonstrate a cold, calculated disregard for human life. Beyond murder, crimes like armed robbery also contribute to the prison's population. However, these robberies often involve high levels of violence, such as shootouts with police or hostage situations. When the level of aggression and danger escalates to a point where public safety is at significant risk, CMAX becomes the only solution. Then there are cases of domestic violence that end in tragic fatalities or assaults so severe that they're classified as attempted murder. In many ways, the common thread among CMAX inmates is their capacity for violence that goes beyond the ordinary. The crimes they commit leave victims and communities scarred, creating a need for a prison capable of containing their potential for harm. Another group that frequently ends up in CMAX includes leaders of organized crime syndicates and gangs. South Africa's gang culture, especially in areas like the Cape Flats, has created a pipeline to maximum security prisons. Gangs like the 20SIXS, 27s, and 28s are notorious for their violent initiation rituals and their control over criminal enterprises. Leaders of these gangs wield immense power, often coordinating drug trafficking, extortion, and even assassinations from within prison walls. Rashid Staggy, one of the Cape Flats' most infamous gang leaders, was a prime example of how gang operations transcend physical imprisonment. Even while incarcerated, these leaders have the influence to instigate violence or continue their illegal activities. That's why they're placed in CMAX, where stricter controls limit their ability to operate. Organized crime isn't limited to street gangs either. Sophisticated syndicates involved in large-scale fraud, smuggling, and even human trafficking also contribute to the inmate population. What sets these individuals apart is not just their crimes but their ability to mobilize others to commit them. CMAX serves as a way to isolate these figures and disrupt their networks. However, even in the hyper-controlled environment of maximum security, the reach of organized crime often finds ways to persist, raising questions about the effectiveness of such confinement. Some crimes are so severe that they transcend national borders, affecting societies on a global scale. CMAX also houses individuals convicted of crimes against humanity, such as apartheid-era atrocities or acts of terrorism. One of the most infamous inmates was Eugene de Kock, nicknamed Prime Evil, who was responsible for countless assassinations and acts of torture during apartheid. De Kock's actions were not random, they were part of a systematic effort to oppress and control a population. For criminals like him, CMAX becomes a form of containment that acknowledges the scope of their harm. Then there are cases of terrorism, where individuals or groups aim to destabilize governments or incite fear on a mass scale. Such crimes often involve meticulous planning and leave hundreds, if not thousands, of lives affected. The severity and scale of these actions make maximum security a necessity. Human traffickers, particularly those orchestrating cross-border operations, also fall into this category. Their crimes are not just about exploiting individuals but about profiting from systemic harm. CMAX becomes their new reality, a stark contrast to the power and freedom they once wielded. By isolating these individuals, the justice system aims to send a strong message about the consequences of such large-scale crimes. Not all CMAX inmates are part of syndicates or responsible for systemic crimes. Some are there because their actions have shocked the conscience of society. Crimes like mass shootings, gruesome murders, and high-profile kidnappings often lead to maximum security sentences. These are the crimes that dominate headlines and leave communities reeling in fear. For example, cases involving brutal violence against women and children are often classified as some of the most heinous. While not every perpetrator of such crimes ends up in CMAX, those whose actions are particularly brutal or calculated often do. High-profile cases involving serial rapists or child predators also contribute to the prison's population. In some cases, these offenders are sent to CMAX not just for their crimes but for their own protection from other inmates in lower security prisons. The emotional weight of these crimes often leaves society demanding the harshest punishments. For the victims and their families, CMAX represents a sense of closure, knowing that the offenders are removed from society. However, the psychological toll on offenders and the challenges of rehabilitation in such an environment remain controversial. Life in CMAX is designed to break down the spirit of even the most hardened criminals. Inmates spend up to 23 hours a day in solitary confinement, with 1 hour for exercise in a small, enclosed yard. The prison's design ensures constant surveillance, with cameras and guards monitoring every move. Meals are delivered through slots in the doors, and interactions with other inmates are rare. Rehabilitation programs exist, but access is limited and often reserved for those deemed capable of reform. Many inmates describe life in CMAX as a form of psychological torture. The isolation can lead to mental health issues, including depression and anxiety. For some, the monotony of prison life becomes a greater punishment than the confinement itself. However, not all inmates are resigned to their fate. Reports of smuggling, bribery, and even orchestrating crimes from inside CMAX have surfaced over the years. This raises questions about the effectiveness of maximum security in truly neutralizing threats. For the most part, though, life in CMAX is a daily struggle for survival, both physically and mentally. It's a place where the line between punishment and cruelty is often blurred. As we look at the crimes and lives of those in CMAX, a larger question looms. What does justice mean in a society as complex as South Africa's? For many, CMAX is a necessary evil, a place to protect society from its most dangerous members. But for others, it represents a failure to address the root causes of crime, such as poverty, inequality, and systemic corruption. Rehabilitation in such an extreme environment is nearly impossible, leading critics to argue that CMAX is more about retribution than reform. The stories of those in CMAX also highlight the societal conditions that breed such extreme criminality. Many inmates come from backgrounds of severe poverty or abuse, raising questions about prevention rather than punishment. At the same time, the severity of their crimes demands accountability and justice for victims. Balancing these two needs is one of the biggest challenges for South Africa's justice system. As we reflect on CMAX, it's clear that the prison is more than just a building. It's a mirror of the country's struggles with crime and inequality. Whether it succeeds in its mission is a question with no easy answers. So, who ends up in CMAX? The answer lies not just in the crimes committed but in the system that tries to contain them, a system still searching for balance between punishment, protection, and rehabilitation.